All right, hey everybody. So this is Josh Bruce, and today we're going to be doing part 3 of the reMarkable journey. And this one's going to be focusing strictly on the software and partially on the software-hardware integration with the overall or within the overall customer experience. I'm really enthused that I got the update to 2.0 on the OS. I am still experiencing the dead pixels problem, but as soon as I get done shooting this, I am totally going to start that process, and we'll see what that feels like when I talk about it later. So I think that's it. Let's jump into it, shall we? All right, so we're going to be doing a lot of drawing here, so let's go ahead and wake this up. I do appreciate the new layout. I'm not going to be doing a lot of comparisons here. There's going to be a playlist in the description below by the gentleman that I keep mentioning and don't want to ruin his name. So check that out. He definitely covers a lot more ground with the differences. I'm mainly looking at this from the perspective of what do I like, what do I dislike, right? So the ability to create folders, the quick sheet is probably one of my favorites because when I draw, I can just hit the quick sheet and it basically adds a new page to the end of the quick sheets notebook. So when we talk about being able to do rapid capture, that's what we're talking about. You can wake the device up. If you're on the main grid, just go ahead and hit that, right? So what do we want to do next? The toolbox, they've moved to being on the right side, at least for left-handed people, but they've taken away this upper piece. So they've gotten rid of sort of a distraction, which is actually really nice because I like to leave the tools open because I'm constantly switching not only what I'm writing with, right, but also how thick the lines are, what color they are. The writing instruments, they've renamed a lot of these, or at least made it less complicated. So basically you have a ballpoint pen, and the idea with these devices is whether or not they react to pressure and what that looks like, and then whether they react to tilt and what that looks like. So a ballpoint pen in the analog world reacts to pressure by making the line darker or lighter, right? And it mimics that behavior. We have the fine liner, which maintains a consistent line no matter the pressure, and it also maintains a consistent color. And then we have the marker. I've never actually used it, I don't think. So the marker is going to react to the tilt, but maintain a consistent color. The pencil is differentiated from the mechanical pencil, which is good. So a traditional pencil, basically you sharpen it to a tip, which means that it reacts to pressure, but it also reacts to tilt, right? So that's pretty cool. A mechanical pencil, on the other hand, doesn't get thicker. It stays the same, but it still has pressure sensitivity, so it can, in theory, I thought it would have gotten lighter. Oh, that's too bad. But it does have a grainy vibe to it, similar to the ballpoint pen. But the ballpoint pen obviously can do different gradations, which is kind of sad because you can actually get gradations with a mechanical pencil. The paintbrush is going to be sensitive to tilt and pressure, I believe. Whoa. Right, so you can tilt it and get a thicker line. You can go lighter and get a thinner line. So yeah, pretty nice. And it looks like I accidentally turned the page because they've added gestures, and I'm not sure how I feel about the gestures. Because when the iPad first started adding gestures, that's where the problems for me and note-taking devices on the iPad really got to the point where I was just like, I'm done. I'm not even going to keep playing with this because I would accidentally activate a gesture just by, that's my pinky right there, right? So if I'm sliding along and I sort of wait or what have you, then I could end up sort of turning the page. So kind of concerned about the gestures thing. Still have the eraser with the 3 different ways to do erasers, have the ability to move, zoom, undo, and redo. Share. I will say the layers being down here confuse me a little bit, just because I would kind of, because it's affecting the page, I would almost expect it to be up here with in between, say, the move and the mark tool, or even down below the zoom, because the zoom also affects the page, right? Like it zooms in. And so, yeah, like that feels weird that the layers are there. One of the things that I am kind of disturbed about, lack of a better term, is that basically the thumbnail view or the grid view of all the pages is now hidden behind, it's like 2 menus deep. And so let's go ahead and delete those 2 pages. And of course we can still, collapse and expand, that sort of a thing. And the reason that it's kind of disturbing to me is because I'm also constantly flipping through pages, and it seems to be less of a battery burn if I can get to the grid and then select a page from there. And I'm actually going to go ahead and duplicate that page. So, it's pretty nice. Or rather, let me try that again. It's really nice from the perspective that, we've consolidated the menus. We have more telltale signs of what it is that we're actually going to be playing with, and that sort of a thing. So I do appreciate it from that perspective. I do wish that some different things would happen, and we'll talk about that in a second. And I don't have much in the way of what I don't like about the update, to be honest, because it's not the update itself, it's sort of issues that I had with the original software as well. And, well, original to me, I guess. So let's go ahead and put this together. And I'm going to turn off those 2 layers. Okay, so this is the device as we had it before. And remember, well, if you haven't seen the other video, basically the way we arrived at this is that there's not really a language that I know of that starts from the top and goes down, like straight, or there's no language I know of that actually plays with the bottom. So having the buttons at the bottom is more a nod to the digital tablet world than it is a nod to the paper world. And the examples we used were a clipboard and legal pad, right? So that the device starts feeling more like that, and you can hold it this way but still have access to the buttons up there. And I will say there's less likely a chance that I'm going to accidentally push a button given the gap that's here, because there's nothing to press here. So I do appreciate that, because I was constantly, hitting undo on accident or something of that nature. So with that said, I actually think it would be better if we actually made it so that the tool drawer was always at the top, or what we would consider the top to be. So let's go ahead and mess with that, right? Now, one of the things that I thought was interesting with the other gentleman's playlist was the concept he was talking about. If we can fit everything into the shorter side, why not have the ability to dictate or tell reMarkable where to be? And that could actually be what we use the double tap for on this button, right, that we added. I said in the previous video that it could be something like a default pen, right? Something that I'm constantly using. I could just double tap that and get back to my default pen. But I actually think it would be interesting if we just double tap it and move it this way, or move it down this way, or move it over here. But basically I could also get all of this to go away, including this little nubby thing that hides my marks in this top right corner, or top left corner. So I can never have a full view of the entire sheet of paper, if you will. And so, because I've always got just a little bit going on there. And it would also be nice, I think, another software solution would be, to allow people to decide what's going to happen with the extras, right? So if we have, trying to see if I actually can use this in this orientation. So there's that. So basically, if we made it so that the click, like the one tap, was set in stone, but we allowed people to be able to do what you can do with AirPods, where you have the double tap interaction with the device itself, where you can play pause music, or activate Siri, or go to the next track, or go to the previous track, that sort of a thing. What if we could kind of do the same thing, and let's say I'm one of the types of people who wants that double tap for, let's go ahead and label these, we'll say A, B, C, and D. What if I'm one of the type of people who, when I double tap the D, I want to have a sort of clockwise rotation of the tool drawer. So I can constantly move it somewhere where it's out of my way, instead of trying to figure out how to make the device do that, because right now we can't really rotate our drawings. I will say it is kind of a nod to fountain pens when you need to kind of go and open and close the drawer. But for me, it kind of gets annoying after a while, where depending on what I'm using it for, which normally is going to be to write things, and I may accidentally hit the X down here and end up back at the grid. And oh, it doesn't keep my state, my layer state, with regard to visibility and invisibility, or visible and hidden. But then I could also set the, see, there it is. I didn't even need to pretend on that one. And then because it doesn't hold my state, I have to go turn off those layers again. I'm going to try holding it like this and see how many times I hit that. But anyway, so, but maybe I am the type of, wow, uh-oh. Ooh. Was it showing, is that menu still there? I hope not. All right, so D, double, and maybe this is, whatever default pen I decide to choose. And anyway, it would just be nice. And you could even make it where it's the hold, because I know we created the hold, D hold, that default was going to be to actually refresh the entire screen. And I will say, I don't know how much of this is just the newness of it, but even the low latency that we already had with the software feels even lower, at least right now. So that's pretty cool. And it does, these menus are popping up a little bit faster, I think. So that's good. One of the other things that I would like to see, I can't remember if I actually mentioned this or not, maybe I mentioned in the other video, is just like you can see the outline of the actual tool I have selected, right? Because this is the fine liner. I'd actually like to see what line I have chosen here as well, right? So if I actually say I want a thin gray line, like this icon would become a thin gray line. And then if I wanted to have a thick black line, that icon would actually become a thick black line, because it was initially I thought they had actually gotten rid of the ability to choose different colors, and that's apparently not the case. One of the other things that I will say is that I would like to see at least 4 colors here. So basically a 100% black, a 75% black, maybe a 50% black, and I guess this would be at the 5th color, the white ink as well. And that way I can, instead of using line thickness, I can actually just go ahead and use color like I did with my composition book. But yeah, so with that said, let's go ahead and I think we can just clear the label or the layer. So let's go ahead and erase the entire layer. And we should still be on that layer, and we are. So yeah, basically if the toolbar is always here, right? And this is sort of our orientation. It's always in what we would consider the top to be. Then when I grab it, the toolbox is physically and visually out of my way, but it's still easily accessible. And so I can do the 2-tap to change device or writing instrument. I can do the 2-tap or 3-tap depending on what I'm all changing. To change the line thickness, I can do the 2-tap. Ooh, that eraser one is not popping out. That's interesting. Okay, so they've done like a double tap or a tap and hold to get that to show up. I'm presuming, oh. I don't know why the colors didn't show up. But basically, if I just want to switch to the eraser, I can. You know, like I can switch to that eraser really quickly. Whereas with the line thickness, I don't know why the colors aren't showing up. That's interesting. When I go from the eraser back to the lines, the color isn't showing up. And then they did the same thing with the pen, the writing instrument itself. So you end up having to double tap to actually get in there, which makes sense because then you can quickly change between erase and the pen. The thing with me is that I try not to erase, so it is interesting. But yeah, and I don't know how many people actually use that zoom capability. I don't think I've ever really zoomed in. And one of the interesting parts with the zoom is that it doesn't actually act the way that I thought it would. So if we zoom in twice and move this over to here, when I'm on an art program or something like that and I've zoomed in, it's actually partially a way for me to get more fine-grained control. And unless they've fixed this, can I move that window? Oh, that would be convenient. So basically I should be able to draw, oh, maybe they did fix it. So proportionally it's still the same size line, right? Like if we come back out to 100%, it's the thickness of a thin line, but by zooming in, and maybe now I will actually use it a little bit more. Yeah, because before I wasn't able to, like, just the measurement wasn't working out, so I should be able to use this for a little bit finer detail. So let's see if we can draw a very small cube that takes up one of the grids. So right, and then I'm gonna change this to a gray, and I'm gonna go ahead and shade in the side of the box, and I'm also going to give us a little bit. I didn't want the shadow there. Let's see if the eraser works too. So now if I come in and I grab the eraser, oh wow, that is not what I was going for at all. I almost want to be able to make the eraser smaller too. Maybe that's what this is. I can actually control the size of the eraser. Yeah, okay, so you can change the thickness of the eraser. That's what that's all about. So now I'm getting it. All right, so let's just switch to the white ink, and we're going to say that the light's coming this way, because of course that's another way to sort of erase this whole thing. So let's switch back to the gray. Let's go to a medium, and we're going to say that the light is coming out this way. The box itself is there. Oh, see, I did that. I hit that button. Now, granted, I'm using it in a way that it shouldn't be used, right? Because it should be up here, and it looks like we don't really have a gesture for wow. I don't think I'm ever going to use the eraser, like ever, because I just can't get that fine grain control. Let's go ahead and move this down just a skosh. Meanwhile, with the white ink, I can. Now it looks like you can actually paint over the grid lines, which is part of the whole shtick, whereas the eraser isn't going to do that. So, but yeah, so zoom, not really my shtick, but it does look like they fixed sort of the issue that I really had with it. Normally, or well, I don't want to say normally, but there's a part of me that does want to see sort of a pinch to zoom in now. With that said, again, the more gestures we add to this, the more chance there is that I can accidentally do those gestures, and it just makes me nervous as all get out. And the big thing, like I said, for me is, take that page view, maybe bring it out here. So if we have it up top, then page view makes sense, or could fit right there, and that way I can easily get to all of the pages in the device and then go back into where I want to go back in, and then in one click I can also go back to the full page view, instead of it sort of feeling hidden inside of here. Now, with regard to this being a notebook icon, the page view does kind of make sense to be there, but so does setting portrait. Like, it makes sense. It's logical that these three are there, but at the same time, just looking at a frequency perspective, at least for me, being able to quickly get to that page overview would be nice. And so again, we can go back to this notion of a hardware switch that can cycle through and be assigned different things, because basically what we could do is we could make so the click, and we'll still call this D. So with the D click, it's still show hide of the tools, and I will say that does feel faster. Like it seems to respond better. Show hide tool, tools. But then if I want to, I could set the double click to be go to the page overview, or actually no. Let's do, instead of that, let's do D double is that rotation of the toolbox around the display, and then do D hold, as going to the page view or page overview. I was thinking of doing the double click just from the perspective of just speed, because I can do those two gestures in roughly the same time that it would take for us to do like a 3-second deal. And if it was a double tap of that button, it would still be as convenient. Now, having said that, let's just make this a suggestion for either or. With that said, chances are once I get the toolbox in the orientation that I want it to be in, I'm probably not going to move it, especially if it's at the top, at least for me. And so now when I throw this in my bag, I don't need to worry about the buttons or anything like that. I can put it in vertically and there will be a different video. But yeah, beyond that, the software here, I love what they've done here. They've even made the battery drain less conspicuous, because it used to just be this like black box that was floating out there. And there's pros and cons to that. By making it conspicuous, you make it obvious, and basically people there will be less complaints of I didn't see that, right? Versus putting it, just making it a black background. So anyway, with that said, that's kind of where we're at. I used to use the list view for this, and now you can still hold the same number of things in both views, but now with the latest layout, it looks clean enough, and I'm not sure which one I'll stick with. And the stars look better than bookmarks, the like favorited, and so it definitely feels cleaner. It feels like a better use of the grid and everything. And then we have notebooks, PDFs, ebooks, and favorites. So putting this up here and moving the settings and stuff down here. We also got rid of if you've seen the other video, then you know that I've talked about this feeling a little bit over branded, but we got rid of the RM logo up here and moved settings down here so you can sort of see what's going on easier. And so yeah, so far with the software update, I mean, this video was supposed to be a lot longer, or would have been a lot longer. Like if we check out the show notes and for the software, you can basically see, here's all the things that I like, right? I basically like that it wakes up into the last page. So when we wake back up, we're right where we left off, which is great. I can leave it on an open table and it'll stay this way. Like the screen's not going to go blank. So if I'm using this as reference, like say I have these notes here and I'm off drawing on a whiteboard or something like that, and I glance back over, this page will still be here. And so I don't have to keep doing that distracting dance in meetings of like, oh, let me touch my screen real quick so it doesn't go to sleep. Let me touch the trackpad so it doesn't go to sleep. Let me do this so it doesn't go to sleep. And I also don't have to go into settings and say, stop going to sleep automatically. So I really appreciate that here. I do appreciate the eraser options. I did hear some criticism regarding the eraser, which is that basically it doesn't go fast enough. But I think what we're going for with this is, as I erase, I can still see this faint bit of writing here so that I know what's about to go away. And when I let go, that's when it actually gets deleted. So that's erasing, and then there's drawing over, which we already looked at. So yeah, I don't have a problem with the speed, so to speak, because I think it's kind of doing something that maybe some people aren't expecting. The pencil doesn't feel right. There was some criticism there. Now, I don't use pencils as much as I used to, but I seem to remember that it actually feels pretty fine to me. I mean, it definitely feels like a harder lead because just the pressure that I need to apply to even get the faintest mark. And but beyond that, I mean, it does sort of, so if you do like cross hatching, right? So instead of using just the pressure, can you layer on and actually get it to be um, darker? That would be the false thing for me, is that I should be able to do a really light stroke and then come across, and basically this pigment just keeps building up and up and up and up, and that doesn't happen. But yeah, if you check out all the improvements, like screw it, let's do it. Stick to the script, Josh. All right, so so we still don't have that. They fixed that. Remember, last tool based on notebook seems sketchy, at least with the 1.8 software. I think they fixed that. Put tools at the top. We already talked about that. Tool icon shows selection. Yep, got that. Resolution and pixelation. So this has to do with when I draw curved lines and being able to sort of see. Yep, looks like they improved that. Like, it used to look like an old school pixelated 16-bit graphic type of thing. Select by scribble. So one of the things that I would like to be able to do is actually, instead of having to draw a square around what I want to select, it doesn't know what I want to select, because there we go. Instead of having to do that, what I'd actually like to be able to do is just go ahead and scribble over something and have that become the selection. So let's make sure that's not happening just because reasons. So we'll draw a square, we'll do the move tool or the select tool. So that works. And what I'd like to be able to do is basically just, I know this seems weird, but I've also, I let some colleagues of mine play with this, and she did the same thing. She tried to do the same exact thing of like, let me paint on it and have that become my selection. And of course it didn't work. So, so now we've mentioned that. Oops. Select by scribble. Named pages. I think it would be cool if I could actually name different pages like you can in Notebook. That way, again, because I use page view like it's going out of style, like instead of page 3 or page 1, I would like to be able to name certain pages, because maybe I'm not able to actually see what it is based off of the little thumbnail. Named pages, tool top, yep. Passcode. So I've mentioned this before, but basically there's an opportunity that you have to set a passcode for the device. I have not set a passcode for the device, and the reason is that I want to be able to launch the device, get in, and go to work. I don't want anything really getting in the way of that. With that said, because I can have multiple notebooks, I might want to. And so it would actually be, I think, pretty nice if I could go into the settings of this notebook, right, and say lock or passcode, add passcode or something to that effect, where basically this notebook, in order to launch it, you have to put in a passcode. And if the device goes to sleep, right, if it wakes back up before you can enter anything, it basically says enter the passcode. So I think that would be interesting. So I will also say that the full page refresh seems a little bit weird. I get a lot of haloing around some of the e-ink. I'm not sure what that's about. I'd really like to be able to easily delete a sheet or delete a page. It may not be something that gets placed in the toolbar. It may be something that's actually inside of here. So new page, delete page. So basically I can just say delete page and it deletes this page. Like, are you sure? Yes, delete this page, and it gets removed from the book. So I don't have to go into the page overview, hold it down, and then hit delete. Because sometimes, or rather a lot of times, I'm just doing one-off things. I'm not trying to save these for posterity. So default mark maker, talked about that. 2 ways to get home. Not really, no, that's not a problem. Delete page, yep. Tag-based folders. So one of the things that I would also like to see in a future version is the ability to create my own tags, right? So if you've ever used Mac OS or Windows, the Windows implementation is not as robust, but basically being able to have tags and being able to tag certain notebooks, because as soon as I started using this, all of a sudden I started having all these little notebooks pop up, right? So like ending lease, I'm getting ready to move, and another reason I'm shooting all these at once, but basically end of lease, right? I can open that up, it's a project, and I can tag things related to that project. So if I get a PDF of a document that I need to sign or something of that nature, I can easily filter that through that menu. So I think tags would be nice. And there's that embossing thing. Page thumbnails. Okay, so now here's one of the other things that I would like to see, because we have the ability to add pages just ad hoc, right? So I can add a page anywhere inside of this notebook. I think we talked about it a little bit and when we were talking about the hardware, so I'm not going to go into too great of detail here. With that said, I would like to be able to actually take this, duplicate it, and then be able to, I don't know, maybe do a press and hold or something, some type of interaction that kind of allows me to then move this selected thing into a different page in a different notebook. That would be really cool. Or the ability to even move it to a different layer within the same page. That would be pretty awesome. And when we talk about layers, of course you can move them, you can delete them, you can show hide them. Maybe also being able to actually send these, because I think the gentleman that I keep mentioning talks about sending parts of your PDF. Like you can't send the PDF and your annotations as one file, but basically being able to share that one layer or take that entire layer and duplicate it into a different notebook or move it into a different notebook. I don't know. It's not the biggest deal breaker in the world, but I would like to, given that one of the things that the digital world gives us over the analog world is the ability to easily replicate things like this little square and also move them somewhere else, right? Like when it comes to, for example, notebooks, like standard issue notebooks, the ability to take this page from a composition book and put it either into a different composition book or a different position within the same book is pretty much unheard of. And I think if we leverage that a little bit more and make that workflow, those user workflows, just dead simple, I think it would definitely be keep us ahead of the competition, so to speak. And I'm not down for standard issue competition as known, but basically it would help keep us on track to being able to take advantage of all the really cool parts about working with paper and all the really cool parts about working with digital and blend them together into a really nice seamless experience. So there we go. And I think that's kind of it with regard to the software of my originality stuff. Like what I think I haven't seen in other videos that will be linked down below. So yeah, and so we'll switch to the face cam, do a quick summary. All right, so there you have it, and that's sort of the reMarkable software. Codex 2.0, which is a operating system that reMarkable is working on that's built atop Linux that is specifically made for dealing with these devices. And I don't mean dealing with as though it's a heavy chore or anything like that, just that that's what they're designed to do. So I really appreciate this device. I really appreciate this update. I mean, you saw how many of the notes I had of what I was going to say of like, it's kind of rough around here. Oh, if we could only do this. And like, it just went away. I feel like a lot of what we ended up talking about was just me really kind of exploring the redux of what if the menu wasn't on the side, right? What if we could move it anywhere we wanted to arbitrarily? What if by default we actually just put everything up in the top? So everything like hardware, software. So imagine like the device actually looks like this and all of the buttons are at the top. And then you open and close a drawer here and then have all of this real estate, save, that 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. I just think that would be lovely. And if we have the ability to shrink down the bezels, right? Like one of the things we talked about in the previous video was, making these bezels or keeping the exact size of the bezels the same to function or to pull off whatever function they have. But if you can imagine, like on the back, right? So there we go. This aluminum plate, maybe it could also come down and have the rubber stripping on it, and then we basically just have this little bar up here. I don't know. I'm really just digging where this seems to be going and how much care that reMarkable seems to be placing in their customer experience. And for me, I'm willing to pay, and this is not, I don't think this is too much of a premium price exactly, but because there's a difference between cost, price, and value. And if we want to have that conversation, just let me know. But basically, I typically am willing to pay a little bit more for more of a better experience, right? Like I don't go to, yeah, I'm not even going to try an analogy because I'd probably get sued or something. But basically, I'm willing to work a little bit harder for someone or with someone who seems like they're willing to work harder with me versus some of the other experiences I've had in the customer experience space where it doesn't feel that way, right? Like the company just feels like, we're a big, using jeans as an example. I'm not bitter, but like, we sell millions and millions of jeans. If we, treated you differently or whatever, right? Like our return policy is this or what, so on and so forth. Like it's getting kind of ridiculous out there, right? For example, like a mini rant, I guess. It's becoming excessively difficult to get in touch with a company. And I get it. When you become popular, it becomes difficult and you need to be able to filter things out and so on and so forth. But at least make it easy via your website or something, right? And even Apple, and I give Apple mad kudos for their customer experience, but even with Apple, some of that, sometimes I'm really annoyed with how I get to support. But you know what? When you go to the Apple website, in the top corner, there's a big link that says support, right? There are companies that I've dealt with regard to customer experience where like I'm on their website, I have to go down to the footer. There's nothing that says contact us. There's nothing that says support. There's nothing that says, do you need help? And instead, I go to a search engine, do a search real quick, find the link from there, get there, and what's there when I actually make it to that page? It's a link telling me to go to Twitter. And then when I go to Twitter, so I have to sign up for an account to direct message you. I have to actually, have access to this thing. then when I send you a message, basically talk to 5 different people, right? Because they're all just on this rotation of I'm going to reply to this one, I'm going to reply to that one, blah, 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 blah. And everybody has to get re-caught up in what we're talking about to then tell me there's a link, here's a link that you can use with a code or something to then go to actually put in a ticket, a support ticket, and then those people tell me basically you have to then walk or pay ride share or get a lift, whatever, to some courier somewhere, pay for shipping, pay for the box, pay for all this stuff, then wait. And not only that, but we might even tell you, no, we're not even going to replace your crap. And it's like, dude, okay, I guess I'm not buying your stuff anymore, which is fine. Like, especially when it comes to commodities like jeans, right? And that's why when I find companies like reMarkable seems to be, I'm so impressed. Because if nothing else, every email that I get from support, that I've gotten from support so far, it always has the same name on it and sounds like the same person. Even if it's not, they're putting in the effort to make it seem that way. And we can talk about transparency and the whole Twitter thing, but still. So, yeah, that's, like I said, I'm willing to go a pretty fair bit with somebody who seems like they're willing to go a fair bit with me. So anyway, end rant. As always, thank you so much for making the time. I definitely do appreciate it, and I'll see you around.